Okay, thank you. Primarily, welcome to all of you. I think from ASCII side, I think the entire team is there. I think the DG is not there. Subodh?
He had some pressing arrangements. Dr. Valli is representing, so
All right.
she will.
All right. Okay. Let me just start the discussion as to why are we here. Srini, if you recollect our last conversation I had with you, we said that we are starting a search and doing a study the progression. The biggest challenge is today, and I think I mentioned that in the last meeting also. The media narrative is largely consumed. The public narrative is more consumed about how not to get COVID. And we're talking about social distancing. We're talking about how people are not following. And the second big narrative is how many people are dying and how many people are not getting hospital admission. So this is collectively where the maximum. Every day, everybody says that the COVID number of positive cases reached a peak. As if it's not going to happen, because even you add one more number to it, it reaches a peak. But the entire focus of media has to be shifted to what is the full picture, not the part picture. So to do any kind of such analysis, we need to know a lot more about the disease, about this progression of the disease, what are the statistics on it. And therefore, we felt that we must do two things. One, project the future. So far, if you recollect, in sometime in April and March and April, a lot of projections came, including John Hopkins gave a prediction for India. They talked about 300, 400 million people get in India, and people have all debunked it. There was a lot of risk attached to it. So later on, people stopped doing any projections. But we felt, I talked to ASCII, we all discussed internally, we felt that no, we don't have a projection, we don't know where we are going and what is likely to happen. How do you assess what is the infrastructure we need? How many kits do we need? How many ventilators do we want? How many hospital beds do we need? All of them can be planned only if we have a prediction. And there is a fundamental risk in prediction. There are multiple models. We don't know what works. And there are a lot of data deficiency. People talk about motivated data. Data is withheld from people. Something is pulled down from website. All these problems are reality. We have to live with this reality. But given this reality, can we make a prediction? Let's say short-term period of 2 months up to September 30th, because long-term predictions are even more difficult. And secondly, use the latest data. Don't use the data of February and March. It's all outdated. Can we take the latest trend that is happening very recently and try and project the immediate past to the immediate future? Is a far better prediction model. And therefore, we have started that exercise of trying to understand that. The second part was based on the various percentages of.
Murali, a bit louder, please.
Yeah. Come again?
Sir, your video is also not clear.
You have to speak a bit louder, Murali, or perhaps a little bit closer to the mic.
Okay. Yeah, I'll change it. Just hold on. You clear now? Little better? Hello, is it better now?
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Srinivas, sir, how about you? You are muted, sir. Srinivas, sir, 1 second.
Murali, we can hear
you. Audio better now?
Hello? Yeah, slightly better. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just try. I'll finish it. By the time I come next round, I'll better. But I think the point I was making was fundamentally one point. The point is, it is important for us to make predictions. It is important for us to arrive or derive the capacity required. Compare with that capacity, where are we going to be? If there is a big gap, we need to take action now. That's one clear agenda. Then what are the action we can take? That is part of the recommendation. So the presentation today is in two parts. Part A is the projections, both in terms of where COVID will be, kind of positive cases to active cases. And secondly, based on the active cases, what is the capacity required and what is likely to be available? That is one part A. And part B is to focus entirely on the what can we do to increase the capacity, what can we do to handle the other issues. So there are two parts in it. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Subodh, who's driven this project, and over to you, Dr. Subodh.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Muralidharan. I think he has actually set the stage for the interaction with for the FICCI ASCII FTCCI work. Just to add on to what Professor Muralidharan said, I think this report technically worked into two parts. One is to sort of as on September 30th, what would be the scenario in a conservative as well as an alternative scenario. Based on that, we come out with some actionable recommendations. If you could give me the screen share, I can just quickly go through.
The screen share rights are given.
Yeah, okay. So I can just, this could make it easier. So what I'm going to do, I think Professor Muralidharan, Mr. Muralidharan has already highlighted why we are doing this exercise. I just want to start with the basic premise that India has traditionally not been doing well in the health system. I think we are ranked 145 by Lancet out of 192 countries. Our total health expenditure as a percentage of GDP is not very high. If you compare with China, Sri Lanka or Philippines, our out-of-pocket expenditure is very high. But having said that, now when it comes to COVID, I think the entire country has geared up to fight this pandemic. So we are already starting with a very sort of a lower profile, but we are actually trying to improve. So we all know that the first pandemic started in January in Kerala as the index case, and then March in Telangana in March, and that reported cases, both the deaths as well as the cumulative cases have increased substantially, especially in the last 2-3 months. So right now we know that there's a lot of, there are fear psychosis going on, that the number of cases are picking up. Simultaneously, the testings have also increased. I think there's been a lot of debate about the low number of testing, but now I think testings have increased. There is also a lot of discussion about the role of private sector, what happens to the manpower, what happens to health communication. So I think those are things which are being discussed. So we have kept all these in mind when we actually took this issue of projecting up to September 30, 2020. So we also have evidence to say from various experts have told that there could be a drastic increase in the infections by September 2020, because now at least 2 states like Kerala and Maharashtra and all have said that there is a community transmission. Even Telangana has accepted that there could be a community transmission. It is not earlier, I think 90% of cases or 80% of the cases were with the GHMC, I think in Hyderabad. But now we know that if you look at the latest data which is provided by the government, it is actually spread across the rural areas. So we know that the entire Telangana has to now gear up for a COVID pandemic. And there is also now experts who are saying that the peak should be anywhere from September to November. And it need not be for together at all of country, but some states may happen in September, some will be in October. And Telangana, we are hoping, or not hoping, actually we are, there could be a situation that as on 30 September, there could be a peak. So we need to be geared up to that situation. And what should be the proactive policy measures which government can take at that point of time. So what we have actually done is, we know that right now things are a little okay. I think everything is in sort of control, but what happens when it comes to September 2020? So we took the 2 possible scenarios, a conservative scenario, looking at the current statistics, how it will just go standard. But if there is sort of a forecasting or with the additional numbers, we have actually used some data to project that there could be a sort of a little bit of a worst case scenario so that the government can be prepared. We are not saying that it will be that or in September 2020, but we are only saying that the worst what government can expect is something. And we are also looking at, based on all this, our idea is not to come out with that actual number, whether it's 2 lakhs, 3 lakhs, 4 lakhs, 5 lakhs, that's not our idea. Our idea is to look at the hospital structure requirements in Telangana. So I think if by any chance we reach that number, what could be the hospital infrastructure requirement in both scenarios at across different levels, not just in the tertiary care. Everybody talks about tertiary care, but we also have to look at the primary care, your quarantine centers, your isolation centers at the primary level, secondary level, what happens to your PHCs, your urban PHCs. These are things which government are doing. So we have actually now brought in a lot of recommendations to see what sort of actionable steps can be taken. So this is the basic objective of the report. I just want to highlight 2 important, I think we have enough statistics available now. I think we have both national and state level data available. Telangana is actually giving excellent data, I think quite a bit detailed reports in the last 10 days, 15 days. But if you look at those data, I think one good thing, I think which everybody highlights is the recovery rate. I think recovery rate in India has been very high. But what is very important is everything does not require a hospitalization. So you are not actually going to a hospital when you are COVID positive. You are 80%, you may have mild symptoms or asymptomatic symptoms. You should be staying at home, or isolation centers have to be there. Only 0.35% or less than 2% would require a ventilator or a ICU bed, and around 3% requires an oxygen bed. So although we say that these are very small numbers, but when it comes to a very large population, if you take the population of Hyderabad or population of Telangana, these numbers also become very important. So so we know that in India as well as in Telangana, the situation is this, but we are trying to see what could be the projection when it comes to September 2020. And we know that we are also focusing not just on the cumulative cases, we are also looking at the cumulative active cases, because that is what actually determines all your projections. And Telangana actually is doing well when it comes to recovery rate as compared to in states like say Gujarat or Delhi or Tamil Nadu, but it's still more things have to be done. So what have we done is we, as you Mr. Muralidharan rightly did two parts, because we don't want to go straight into recommendations without actually telling what the projections are. So we actually did a projection up to this, and we looked at different models of forecasting. So if you have looked at the literature, I think all over the world they are doing forecasting. There is a reproduction arrow model, there is a Levitt model, there is a regression model, which is simple linear regression models, and there are similar other models, which I think I've actually mentioned about susceptible, exposed, infection, recover model. The idea of all these models that most of them are very data intensive. Unfortunately, Telangana is one place where we don't have that sort of data which is coming out. We don't have, say, district-wise data or an environmental parameters data or information period data. So what we have is sort of a basic regression model which we have applied, but we have reviewed most of these models and then come out with the best model which would suit us. I want to just finish my presentation and leave it to my colleague to do explain about the estimation. But before that, I just want to tell you that we have reviewed all the models, and most of them are data intensive models, and we use the best model which could explain. So that's why we use the regression model. The second point is our idea is not to tell to the government that, okay, after 3 lakhs or 4 lakhs and it becomes a very big sensational news. So that's not the idea. The idea is there could be a potential situation in the long term, whether it could be a very pessimistic scenario or a very worst case scenario, that this could be something which could come. But and we are not looking at the accurate data, but we are looking at the order of magnitude. We want to say that, okay, if such a thing happens, what is going to be your health infrastructure situation? And I will also realize that later that even with the worst case scenario or even the conservative scenario, our health infrastructure is doing very well. Telangana itself had a sort of a huge priority in healthcare. So I think it's a state which has always had a priority towards health innovations and all. So I think I'm sure that the government also are working on it. So even projections, it's not going to be a situation where health infrastructure, we are completely off track. So the idea is not to come out with a projection number, but I think using that projection number to come out with very solid recommendations. Having said that, no state, I think we haven't really looked at a sort of a very credible scientific forecasting method. So that's why we have done with this attempt of this first part of the report of estimating what happens to our cumulative active cases when it comes to September 30th on 2020. So I'll stop here. I'll ask my colleague, Dr. Shashwat, to now present the estimation and the major findings of the part A of the report. Thank you.
Yeah, I think before Dr. Shashwat comes, there are 2 points I want to add. One part is that there was a presentation made a few days ago to talk to some of the experts in the domain and ask their opinion whether we are on the right track. In general, I think there has been a very positive support to the numbers and what we arrived at, the model that we adopted and so on. So that I think is a very important thing. We didn't want to present to anybody until we have some kind of a discussion with peers. And that I think I'm very happy about. The second thing is also that, we have to be prepared. That is the key word. We should not think that, this world will come to an end. No, that's not the message in this project. The whole project is, yes, we can control them, we can manage them. All we have to be aware which are the directions we need to go. I think these are the 2 points I want you to keep in the back of the mind when you look at the numbers. Yeah. Shashwat, over to you.
I think we've lost Shashwat, I think. Just
Do you have the presentation? Can I then go with it until he comes?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, just play the slide then. We'll go with it. And Shashwat can join as soon as he comes.
One sec. Can I do a screen share? I think Shashwat is here. I think he'll do it.
All right. You send me also the copy. You have made the revised version now, Subodh?
It's already there. It's already sent you.
Sent to me.
Yeah. Shashwat, you can go ahead.
Yes, sir. Just a second. I think I lost this internet connectivity. I'm just logging in once again, sir.
Dr. Muralidharan, if you want to go this, I've already shared the screen.
No, you can go ahead. We're waiting for you.
I know. I think I think Shashwat is coming. Yeah.
Sir, I think I had to log in through my cell phone. I think this internet here is showing some problems. Can I request Sarah
Yeah, he's displaying
to
it.
just
Go ahead.
pop
Already
up
showing
the...
Yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Subodh Muralidharan, sir. Before I start out with the presentation, I would like you all to know that the most part of the entire part of the data collection, data transformation, cleaning, and estimation of the models has been carried out by my friend Mr. Harish Tadinada, who works with this TMI group under the aegis of Muralidharan, sir. So coming to the methods part, we have in fact slide number 2, please. So we have made use of the secondary data. Which has been sourced from the official website of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of Telangana. And we have used the following indicators, as you can see. So we have used testing, confirmed cases, negative cases, deaths, active cases, and so on. Now the time horizon for analysis is between 21st June and September 30th. Right, so the 21st June was the starting date of an analysis, given that the testing in Telangana actually ramped up from that particular date. So what we have taken is, we have taken the actual figures of all these parameters, actual figures between June 21st and July 24th. So from July 25th onwards till September 30th, we have extrapolated or predicted or estimated the various variables. Now we have made use of some predictive models to come up with the case counts, and the projection has been made for the specified time horizon using 2 approaches, friends. And the first approach is a conservative approach. The second is an alternative approach. Very briefly, what do you understand by this conservative approach? Now, what we are saying is, now whatever is the rate at which the government is doing the testing, if that particular rate continues, so the increase in the testing, if it continues by a constant proportion, so what would be the total number of confirmed cases? What will be the total number of active cases? What will be the number of recovered cases? What will be the number of death cases, and so on, right? So it increases by a testing, increases by a constant proportion, by a constant figure, and the government continuously increases the capacity. So that's the conservative approach. Now, what's an alternative approach? Now, alternative approach, we are basically talking about giving a worst case scenario, friends, the worst case scenario. But here we are not saying that testing is going to increase exponentially. That's not what we have assumed here. We have assumed that if the number of recovered cases or the number of positive cases. If the number of positive cases grow exponentially, but the number of recovered cases grow linearly in a constant fraction, number of deaths increase exponentially, so what would be the bearing on all the parameters, right? So we come to the next slide. So here we have actually showcased, the scenario one is a conservative, scenario two is an alternative. So scenario one, we have talked about the linear part. Scenario two, which is an alternative or the worst case, we are talking about an exponential increase. As you can see, that we have taken in case of the alternative, your positive, daily positive cases is expected to increase or is assumed to increase exponentially, right? But then we are also assuming that the recovered rate or the rate at which recovery happens is linear. Death rate increases exponentially. So that is how we are actually, obviously, if deaths increase exponentially, positive, confirmed cases increase exponentially, only then we can reach out to a worst case scenario. Next slide, please, ma'am. So these are the estimation techniques, friends. I understand most of us do not have the background of this. So very briefly, I would tell you, for the conservative approach, we have adopted linear regression models, which is the first equation. And for, as for projecting, case counts for an alternative scenario or for the worst case scenario, we have used an exponential growth model. I would love to expand upon my views if you want to understand more about it, in due course. So I'll only say at this point of time that if you can see the independent variable here, whatever is the independent variable or whatever is the dependent variable. Suppose we are saying that negative cases is a function of confirmed cases. So in case of linear regression, we are saying that if your confirmed cases increases by 1 unit, then by what constant proportion your negative cases change. So it's a constant. Now in case of exponential function, for projecting a worst case scenario, we are saying that if there is a 1 unit increase in your confirmed cases, by what percentage rate your negative cases increase. Just as an example, friends. Next slide, please. Yeah. So based on these two estimation techniques, we have projected our scenarios. Now, coming to the scenario one, we have made a few assumptions. And we say that the population remains fixed, so no natural deaths happen in due course, no natural births happen in due course. Then the group is more homogeneous. That means the risk of vulnerability towards the disease is negligible, right? So if that varies, the model will not hold. There is no full shutdown. Assumption number 3, as has been the case. The medical staff remains operational, so not a gigantic share of our medical personnel go down with COVID. So we are not assuming that. So it is still operational. So no vaccine is introduced. The real incidence of the disease is unknown. And the 7th, importantly, the government continues at the current rate. Whatever is the current rate, government continues testing at the current rate and continuously increases the capacity. So these are the assumptions for the first conservative scenario. You can move to the next problem. So we'll not go into detail, friends, here. So, but I would love to expand upon my views. If you have any specific questions on the model, just for that, I would want to say that you can see the F values, which show that the model is highly significant, and they are adjusted R-square, which says that our model fits the data quite well. 70% of variation in the independent variable is actually captured by a dependent variable. So here we have taken testing to be a function of time, and we have regress testing upon time. Next one, ma'am. The second one we have talked about, we have projected the daily negative cases, and we have taken it as a function of time and testing. Right, and here also you can see that we have a highly significant F value. The triple star denotes that it is significant even at 1% level of significance, and adjusted R-square is also 61%. Next one, ma'am. In the third case, we have projected the daily recovered cases. The daily recovered cases has been assumed to be dependent upon the daily confirmed cases. Here also we can see the F value highly significant, adjusted R-square also highly dependent. So what basically it says that 74.6% of variation in the confirmed cases is actually determines the daily recovered cases. Next one, ma'am. So this is the fourth projection. We have projected the daily deaths. We have taken daily deaths as a linear regression function, and here we have taken the daily deaths is a function of testing confirmed cases and the recovered cases. Here also, friends, as you can see that the F value is highly significant, and adjusted R square, though on a lower side, but then it's again an adjusted R square. There's a difference between R square and adjusted R square. So even if it is 39% approximately, it can still be accounted for. Assume that it's a very good, in fact, a model really fits well the data points. Now, based on these, friends, you can come to the final. So what is the outcomes that we have seen based on the linear regression models? So we here see that the cumulative cases would increase to 70, just over 76,000, assuming the current pace. The cumulative active cases, right? So we have emphasized on the active cases, as Muralidharan sir has said, Dr. Subodh has also said, because the active cases, it is more important, because that only determines the health infrastructure requirement, that only determines the spread of the disease, of the infection. So the daily testing can reach up to 30,000 is what we are saying. So the point here is to be noted is we are not saying the daily test should be increased, or linearly if it increases, it will reach up to 30,000, right? From where the current level is only 11,600, right? The cumulative deaths may scale up to nearly 1,400, whereas the deaths per day is expected to reach 18. So the present count is 10. Now this daily death forecast, shows on the lower side. And it's something that we can actually ponder about why, when we are showing that the cumulative active cases are increasing, positive cases increasing, how is it that, the death forecast is increasing, but at a snail's pace. Next page, ma'am. So we come to the second scenario and the assumption for the second scenario. Now, whatever assumptions we have taken for the conservative scenario remains intact, remains true, holds true for the scenario second, for the worst case scenario, excepting for the seventh one that we have, highlighted. The recovery rate follows a linear trend. We are not allowing the recovery cases to increase exponentially. If that is allowed, obviously we are not going to reach at a worst case scenario. So we are assuming that the positive cases increase exponentially, the death cases increase exponentially. So these are the assumptions for the next one, ma'am. Now we have made two projections based on the alternative scenario. The first one is the daily confirmed cases. We have taken it as a function of time. Here also we can see that the model is highly significant. Adjusted R square value is 58%. You can move to the next one, ma'am. Yeah. And the daily deaths, again, the similar or not similar, the same explanatory variables are taken to determine the death as was taken in case of the conservative scenario. The daily death is a function of testing, confirmed, and totally cured. Here also we can see that the F value is significant, not at 1%, but at 5% level of significance. And the adjusted R square value is also reasonably high, 34%, given that it is a multiple variable linear regression model. So we come to the outcomes here, friends. Now we can see that the cumulative active cases might increase to 2,62,467, assuming that there will be an exponential spike, right? Now, and the daily testing, according to the model, has been derived. So we are not saying that the daily testing will reach, or the government has to increase the testing up to 6.54. No. Here, in case of the alternative worst case scenario, the only thing that we are saying is that the rate of positive cases increase exponentially. So if this 2,63,000 active cases will be reached only when the daily testing is captured at these levels. That's it. So we are not saying that the government should increase it to 6.54. If the cases increase exponentially, so these many number of tests may be required to identify these cumulative active cases of 2.6 lakhs. So the third bulletin, as you can see, the daily positive cases will go past 37,000. The current level is nearly 3,000 as on July 25th. And the cumulative death figure is again predicted to be 3,200, just little over 3,000. And deaths per day. In case of conservative scenario, it was 11, but we can see it's an 8-fold increase in case of a worst case scenario. So it's 83, almost, 8 times. So yeah, so we can move to the next part. So this table basically summarizes our, both the alternative and the conservative scenarios. As you can see, we are focused on the parts, or the parts that should be more focused are actually highlighted in this orange, the purple color. As you can see, that your daily positive cases from 4,000 is the conservative scenario. In an alternative scenario, it reaches 37,000. Daily new deaths is 18 under conservative, 83 under alternative. active cases on that, which is of more importance and significance that we're talking about, is 76,000 when we're talking about the conservative cases, a little more than 2.6 lakhs when it comes to alternative case. And these number of active cases, and I reiterate, will be identified only when the testing levels are 30,000 in case of conservative scenario and 6.54 lakhs in case of, or in case of your alternative scenario. We can move to the projected graphs, friends. Now, as Muralidharan sir has time and again has been saying, that the moment we see the first graph, 2.84, we are actually said, wow, so the numbers are increasing that, but these are positive cases. So the cases that has happened is not material. What is material is the active number of cases, which is projected to be 75,497 in case of conservative scenario, and 2.62 approximately lakhs in case of the alternative. So the focus needs to be shifted from the positive cases. The media has always, has talked about more about the positive cases, and the people have also talked about more about the positive cases, but the focus has to be shifted towards the, active cases. So what are the active cases that Telangana is going to reach as on September 30th? Second one, the daily positive cases and daily active cases, where you can see in case of conservative scenario, your daily increase in active cases is a quarter of your daily positive cases. So what we are basically saying is, for every 4 new cases on a daily basis, your additional capacity required is only 1. So the same can be said about the alternative scenario as well. In the alternative scenario also, your daily increase in active cases of just approximately a quarter of your daily positive cases. Next one. Here, friends, we can see the cumulative, the cumulative death rates. You can see the, the bottommost, the graph, which is showing a steady declining rate. And in case of Telangana, it is projected that the mortality rate due to COVID will be less than 1%, which is a very good sign, probable sign of good governance by the state. As we are saying that the state, the country's mortality rate is around 3%. The world's mortality rate is 5%. And it's a very positive, encouraging scenario. Next one. So here we are saying that the gap between, as you can see, both these graphs, friends, the gap between your additional cases and your recovery cases, that is shrinking, or the model predicts that it will shrink over the period of next 2 months. Right? So once the gap is increasing, it basically means that the daily requirement or the increase in the capacity required is also showing a declining trend, which is also a good, encouraging sign. So overall, we come to the summary, friends. Now, as per, so we have adopted a linear regression model to estimate forecast figures. For the conservative scenario, we have taken exponential function, exponential growth rate model to predict cases in case of a worst case scenario. And based on that, we are saying that, the numbers are going to be those. But the forecast of daily deaths, I come back to that again, is again showing pretty low. And that could possibly, be because of an possible increase in the non-hospitalization cases. And also maybe an increase in the testing lags that has been widely reported by various news medias. But as I again reiterate, the focus has to be shifted more towards the active cases, and the daily increase in the capacity required, as you have seen that, a daily active increase in active cases, the recovered cases, that is showing a declining trend, or good thing. The cumulative death rate is less than 1%. It's expected to be less than 1% by the end of September. It's again an encouraging good sign. But friends, what is also very crucial, and I would end by saying that what is also very crucial at this particular point, at this particular juncture, is not only to enhance the health infrastructure, which Muralidharan sir will speak, but also to ensure efficient delivery of those services. Thank you so much, friends.
I think continue the same thing.
Yeah.
I'll request you to say next slide. You can continue, Subodh.
Yes, yes.
I think, Srini, the key point here is that the good news is, for every 100 people or active cases, a very small percentage only comes into hospitalization. Right? 80% can be treated at home. Out of the balance, people can be treated in different type of hospitals or what we call primary care centers. Just go back. Only 2.81%, according to the current data, 2 to 3% only oxygen beds are required. 2% are required for ICUs. And this is the most important point we need to know. And therefore, order of magnitude is more important than being accurate. If these numbers, for example, 90% of the people go to hospitals, then obviously you have to be far more accurate in your forecasting model. So you can take the liberty because of the conversion ratios into beds, etc. is very, very small. Okay, next slide. So these are some of the data which is hospital infra. We can skip that. Yeah, we already covered. Next slide. Yeah. So this is the summary. If you look at it, this is an important slide. I want attention to all of us that on the first line is number of active cases and how does it translate into both the case scenarios in terms of quarantine capacity that we need, what is the beds required overall. If you want to have COVID beds, which is where you don't need oxygenation, but they're already identified and they're kept there. And then you go into secondary state, which means they need some oxygen facilities. And then they go to ICU and ventilator facilities. So people progress, as you can see from the top to the bottom, and the numbers are declining. And if you can see, the interesting point is also it talks about the capacity available as on a particular date. And those capacities, if you see 16,000 and 12,000, in the case of oxygen beds, for example, I think government has already talked about yesterday of increasing oxygen beds by 10,000 numbers additionally. So the 12,000 will go up for 22,000. So we are in the right direction, but this gives you requirement of various types. But in the worst case scenario, we need to do a lot more work right now to increase the capacity. I think that's the purpose of giving you this particular slide. Next slide. So now we go back to the next part of the section. This is part B. What are the action recommendations we are giving? I'll be very brief on this because I think action is something which is unlimited. We have to choose some of them. One of the things we decided was not to get into the controversy on whether we are testing enough, not testing enough. We said that's an area. KTR has spoken in various forums. CM has also spoken. I think the general philosophy right now is we will test people only if they show some mild symptoms. We don't want to test on a broad basis because there's also a challenge of if you get people more and more tested and what are you going to do with them. So I
No.
Sorry, I
Murali,
think
the
I
audio
lost
is
you.
lost.
Yeah, I'm back now. So the recommendations are broken into 4 parts. First and foremost, this is the most important, I would say, control admissions. People cannot go wherever they want to go. There must be a centralized system. Actually, Dr. Gurva Reddy from Sunshine was there. And he was also saying that we are willing to agree to this model. We are willing to agree that government should, we are willing to give up 50% of our beds to COVID beds and COVID treatment. Government should have set up a centralized system where allotments are made to this private and this hospital. And we have got a better model and we'll share with you on that. So we need to bring public and private hospital admission to one platform, and only critical cases, as the case progresses, they will move to one stage to another. Second alternate action plan, increase capacity for all levels. We'll talk about it. Third is media. I think I've been saying about it. Now I'm going to give you a little more specific recommendation. What can we do to change the media narrative? And the fourth one is public health infrastructure must improve. I think the poorest of this country suffer a lot because many of the infrastructure is not. The data shows that there are more people. The capacity utilization in public sector hospital is much lesser than private sector hospital, which means that people are willing to go and pay money to the private sector hospital, but they're not going to public sector. This is a worrying factor. The government must do something to clean up the place. And already government said 100 crores they're giving yesterday. That's a very good sign. But I think we need to really worry about the fourth item. Next slide. We're going to get into each of them. Action 1, how do we control the admission? What should be the system we should do? This is based on a very interesting model published by King's College in London. They did a published model, very interesting model, and this is published on 17th of July. It basically says that COVID symptoms can be grouped into 6 categories, and of which the first 3 are mild and the next 3 are the next 3 are more severe. So therefore, everybody does not need the same treatment depending on how the diagnosis is, and we should differentiate the treatment. So what we are saying is categorize people and then admit them through a centralized portal through the three-tier system, and there has to be a central coordination committee, and all patients except aged and severely compromised will have to go through the system. They can't directly go and land up anywhere else. And Kerala has adopted this model called a cluster care model. Next slide. Now these are the 6 levels as identified by King's College London study. I think it's very interesting for us to look at it, the level, and this is something even we can implement it with the more sensible, by clues, some amount of other additional data. They are also built up an ML model, that is machine language and artificial intelligence model. We can try and do something on this. Next slide. So what is it we are saying? In this model, hospital structure is divided into 3 parts: primary, secondary, and tertiary. CCC stands for COVID Care Center. So primary COVID center, secondary COVID care, tertiary COVID center. Each district will have all the 3 levels. Patients will go through a specified system in sequence. 4th is positive patients will register into an app and will be assigned a COVID hospital. Each of them will get assigned a hospital based on their PIN code. So if you are in a geography, you are assigned to a hospital. The assigned hospital will thereafter manage the patient throughout. They will first connect with the patient, and through basic telemedicine, whatever form, they will categorize them into 6 types. The treatment will be done by the assigned hospital in the first stage by 2 models. One, you can take a home care package from them, or you can go to a general practitioner and take help from him, and you are only staying at home. At that time, a lot of kit and information will be given. How do you take care of yourself when you are under home care? If the patient develops symptoms, the same hospital, assigned hospital, will keep on evaluating him periodically and shift him to the primary care center, then to secondary, and so on. So next slide. So what are the 3 centers? One is the primary care center. In this case, it will only meant for symptoms identified. There is some breathing problem, but they will not have any oxygen facilities in primary care center, but they will have oxygenometer to see the level of oxygen. They will also have simple blood pressure, basic facilities will be available. There will be a doctor available. But there will not be any treatment, advanced treatment available except drugs. If the patient requires oxygen, we will move to the secondary care, which is all oxygen beds are available. There will be advanced care, the doctors will be better. And if they further get deteriorate, they will go to tertiary care center, which has ICUs and ventilators. I think this model is important. There is a progression has to be understood. Next slide. This is the sequence of model. You start from the left, go to the home care to primary, primary to secondary, and then to tertiary. Next slide. Now, what are the examples of capacity we can build? In primary care centers, these are the various, one below the other, we have listed what kind of facilities can be converted into primary care centers, and what kind of facilities can be converted into secondary care centers and tertiary care centers. For example, if you take primary care centers, we have schools, we have function halls, we have empty warehouses, and factories are now shut down. We know of cases where some of the factory godowns are completely empty. So we can use some of them for conversion into PCC with some kind of hospital doctor support, no hospital support. In secondary care center, the hospitals get involved. For example, hotels attached to the hospitals will be converted into secondary care centers. They will have oxygen beds. They will have blood testing facilities. If there are any complications, they will be able to attach to the hospital. And the tertiary care centers are where the real specialty hospitals are, both primary and secondary. And there, ICU, ventilators, the multiple care, all will be available there. So a person will move from home to PCC to secondary and tertiary, and these are the various types of capacity expansion possibilities we are recommending. Government should look at each of these areas. How can we convert them into PCCs? Next slide. Next slide. So the second part is the 108 services, telecalling. For example, 108 services will be used for moving from one stage to another. We might have a capacity limitation. 108 is 108 is a very organized facility now. We can use them significantly. The second part is a very important recommendation. This is on COVID pharmacies. Like we have COVID testing facilities, the government should announce 200 COVID pharmacies across the state. These COVID pharmacies, material will be available. Any equipment required, for example, oxygen mask, oxygen home care isolation facilities, then the PPE, all of them should be available at controlled prices. So anybody who wants to buy will have a list of pharmacies in his town. He can go and buy and give it to the hospital. Hospital has to accept when people buy from the COVID pharmacies. The whole idea is that there is a lot of belief and a lot of wrong stories floating around about private hospital charging. We don't know the truth of it, but at least the stories will be lost if people are able to bring their own facilities, consumables and other items directly into the hospital. Police should also play a very important role, and COVID plasma center. Government is already doing, governor talked about it some time ago. We need to bring in police controlled COVID plasma center. Why we say police? Because all recovered patients, the police makes a call, they're more than willing to come and give their blood. So police should be given the data of recovered patients. They should take responsibility of driving traffic to the COVID plasma centers. And we should build adequate capacity of all blood types. Oxygen should be declared as an essential commodity. Already shortage has come down, but I think oxygen should not be a shortage. It's a very unfortunate thing. If patient died, as one story was presented in the paper, patient died of oxygen shortage. This is completely unacceptable. And therefore, oxygen should be centrally procured and made available in the COVID pharmacies. Next slide. Support staff. We are aware, already government has said that all the postgraduate students will be deployed. In our mind, it is important all the PG medical students, 1,200 of them should be deployed in the tertiary care center. But we need to increase capacity both in primary and secondary. So we can use final year nursing students. There are 4,500 of them. Dentistry students, 750, and medical students who are not postgraduate, but in the fourth year, on the third year of medical students. All of them can now be made available to secondary and primary. They can't come to tertiary because they don't have the training. So we are recommending issue also capacity. The third part is already government is doing now. I think I saw an announcement where the government said they're going to increase the incentive for all the people working in hospitals. I think it's a very good idea. Private hospitals anyway are paying a huge amount of money to get more and more medical support staff to come and work for them. I think we should revise their compensation so that they should not be shortage of payment to them. Government should prioritize that so that nobody goes out of salary and their incentive should increase. Next slide. As far as home quarantine capacity is concerned, we are looking at somewhere between 66,000 to 2,25,000 is the requirement for quarantine capacity. Definitely, home care should be the first choice. There is no way we can create public quarantine facility. So I think the government is also in the same direction. We must compliment Telangana government to understand this right from the beginning. They have been pushing this home quarantine. The only problem is once people get into home quarantine, we need to do a lot more education. We must educate them how they should take care of themselves, how they should not panic, how they should not spread the disease to their other co-inhabitants of the house. So there must be a lot more education on home isolation and home quarantine. The kits, home quarantine, home isolation kits must be available at a very subsidized or the price of approved price from the COVID pharmacies. Next slide. The second, now we are talking about a primary care, and this is only after the home care, they will go to this. Here we have various options of increasing capacity, including IT companies. Many of the IT companies today, we saw a story about Azim Promg and Wipro in Karnataka where they converted office space into primary care centers where are simple facilities without oxygen is available. So we already talked about hotels can be converted, especially 2-star and 3-star hotels can be converted. And we also bring in more of community health groups to create and support the PCC infrastructure. Next slide. Next slide, please. Secondary COVID centers. Now, this is a small percentage of people. Kerala government has already identified, Ernakulam districts have already identified capacity of 25,000 patients district-wise. So we need to identify and create secondary COVID care centers. This is where we talked about earlier, all nursing homes have to get assigned. Hospitals, hotels attached to hospitals should be converted to secondary. We need to create this capacity in our top priority. We should also create OPDs at this SSC so that people who want to continue to be at home and support themselves with oxygen at home can also be at this SCC. OPDs can be treated, and we should also promote telemedicine so that all the patients are supported by secondary care centers. Third, next slide. tertiary care center, Telangana Institute of Medical Science we talked about, I think already is coming to all the beds to be converted. This is very important because I think the requirement will increase significantly as time passes. Arogya Shri has to be made available to all the BPL patients, whether they go to any of the hospitals. Depending on the geography, they get attached to hospital. We are not going to say only rich can go to this hospital, poor can go to the hospital. We must get assigned based on PIN code. And another example, we can follow the example of Kerala, Maharashtra, etc., etc. Some of the examples are given here, how they bring in private public sector participation and packages are announced so that there is a feeling that people are not taken advantage of. I think we need to realize public sector hospitals and private sector hospitals are doing outstanding work because they're risking their lives. We are not here to judge anybody. We are only here to support them to make sure that they make it become more transparent. For example, people talk about overcharges. Yesterday, there was a case where patient has been there for 25 days, but that data was not informed. Only the total amount paid was disclosed. But a patient has been ICU for 25 days, obviously the cost will be higher. So these are some of the issues. We need to bring in transparency. But I think we cannot treat private sector hospitals as bloodsuckers. They are partners with us. We should try and work closely with them. That's an important point here. Otherwise, we'll all suffer immensely. Next slide. So I think the specialist rates, especially for comorbid conditions also, the government is already talking about it. But here is a very important point we have made. Like government is engaging with banks when they want to fund. And I think there is also a story. Central government is now talking to engaging with the health insurance companies. State government should talk to health insurance companies. Health insurance we are taking, now we are all taking COVID insurance. The health insurance companies must be present in the hospitals. They must be providing the support services from the hospital. They have to find a way. If every one of them is risking their life, why health insurance companies are not there? Most of the hospitals are not able to give health insurance coverage or cashless facility because health insurance companies have a different view. So the government should bring health insurance companies, the hospitals in one platform and make them agree so that the cashless facilities are available. Even under the COVID 5 lakh scheme, we must get cashless. Otherwise, who can raise 5 lakhs in short notice? The last portion about the private hospitals should be given very strict guidelines. I think the government has the powers to do that. And waste management, this is a concern I think all of us have, especially COVID waste management, incineration, treatment. I think we should bring in a lot more guidelines and a lot of focus on this. Otherwise, this is to become a big area later on. Next slide. So I only want to talk about media. I think I want to talk about, Srini, I think it's important to see the shape of the graph. Just see the shape of the blue graph and the shape of the red graph. When people talk about explosively, growing rapidly, all of them must understand the active cases are not growing that rapidly. For last time we talked about every four increases, only one is going into active cases. Active cases, all the research has shown, they are the only people who can spread the disease. Recovered patients cannot spread the disease. They might get it, but they cannot spread it. So the whole focus should be only on the lower graph. We should not publish this graph at all. In my mind, if you publish the upper graph, all of them are panicking. It looks like it's going exponential. If you look at the bottom graph, you will see it is not growing exponentially. And that is why our case conservative scenario is based on this assumption. I don't think things are as bad as people make out to be. I think we can manage, if you manage the active cases as the focus and get the additional capacity, we can manage it. So negative communication, for example, already there's an improvement. I'm seeing a lot of positive cases coming in all the papers. For every one death case, imagine there are 9 death cases, 11 or 12 cases per day. If you write all the 12 death cases as a story, obviously people think the whole world is dying. The government and the hospitals, all of us should put together, for every one person who dies, we should release the story, human interest story of about 5 to 6 active cases. How they recovered, what is their story, who gave them plasma, which hospital treated them well. So the recovery patients should be 1:5 or 1:6. The problem is people trust all negative stories. Nobody trusts a positive story. So unless we publish additional number of positive stories, the negative stories will continue. So that is another point we are saying. Government bulletin should every day release 5 or 6 positive recovered cases stories, including police guy giving plasma blood, police guy recovering, we saw about Swati Lakra's story, which is a very good story. We must publish and push more and more positive stories into media. Next slide. I think the other part is about health bulletin. I think health bulletin is improved tremendously, but we are saying there must be a special conference immediately called. The government, CS and the CM or KTR should interact with the editors of various media and try and explain to them what we are discussing right now. One-on-one, there must be a lot more discussions on understanding the panic scenario. There is a reality of the COVID. It is not a panic scenario. The government is responding, but we need to bring in more transparency in the communication, and we should create a media watch cell, and that should be populated by all key players, and anything wrong reporting. More importantly, if something true, it should be passed on for action rather than passed on for publicity. In my view, all the negative stories or already true stories which are not false must be given to the media watch cell, and they take it to negative action. They should focus on getting action corrected, providing relief to people. That should be the focus rather than publishing negative stories. So this is one important communication we are giving. Numbers are going to increase more. The panic will increase more. Unless we control the media narrative, I think we are running a big risk. Okay, next slide. These are some of the indicators of which medical bulletin should cover. We have researched what are the WHO, various kind of data being published. Many of them are not being published. So I think this is something important which we want to share, and the media as well as the medical bulletin should focus on some of these elements. For example, what is the capacity? What is the quarantine capacity in the public space that we have? How much is utilized? Already capacity utilization of beds and oxygen beds are coming now. That's a good news. But we need to really focus a lot more on the recoveries. We should talk about the death classification also is coming now. Age of the deaths, comorbidity deaths, all this more and more information you give. Actually, there is a very important story we have in private sector. When there is a crisis in organization, communicate, over communicate. That's the message we tell everybody. Similarly, government should over communicate on COVID, and automatically that lack of transparency accusation will not come, and people will feel more comfortable when more and more data comes inside. Next slide. Health communication, especially I talked about it earlier. How do you handle once you are diagnosed? What kind of psychological counseling should go to the patient? What should go to the patient attenders? How do you take care of yourself? This should be the focus of public announcement, especially through various media. There will be advertisements, etc. Today, the focus significantly still on how to prevent yourself. How do you carry social distancing? Yes, it is important, but this is also equally important, because if people panic after getting the positive, then I think we have a big issue of managing. They try and run to the nearest hospital and the whole thing gets choked. Next slide. Next slide, please. So the last one is here on this part is Center for Monitoring COVID. I think we are recommending that ASCI, FTCCI, FICCI, all of us will, hospital association, will all come together and create a monitoring cell. This monitoring cell, in addition to government bulletin, will give a lot more of information, real-time analytics. For example, many people have not seen the graphs. Many people, the medical bulletin gives only a data on a particular day. It doesn't give you a trend analysis. So we should give a lot more analytics, which the Center for Monitoring should continuously look for the best practices in other states. It should keep on supporting the government media bulletin. And therefore, we are offering that ASCI and all of us can put some energy and make this happen. We can set it up. It will also give data on where are the beds available. A lot of the information we can share from this. Next slide. So the last question is about public infrastructure. I think less said the better. I think this is the biggest challenge now. We need to have focus on cleanliness. We need to have hygiene. We need to have morale of the hospital doctors. We should talk about nurses' morale. So public hospitals, we need to get a lot more. I think the government is most proactive. Yesterday's 100 crores release is a very big news. I think we recommend that the public officials should visit hospitals and all the public hospitals periodically. Media should be allowed to travel periodically and publish, but that should be in the media watch so that we can take action rather than make a panic story out of this. So we need to really get a lot more attention on public health infrastructure. Next slide. The convergence. Convergence. This is the last point, last slide. I think we have to converge. We are recommending health, police, all other departments should come under a coordination under the chief secretary. And the model is already followed by Kerala and Madhya Pradesh. We need to bring in a lot more linked officials of the elected representatives. So I think already many of them our government is doing. We want to strengthen that. We need to bring in a lot more coordination across the public, private, and within the government segment. I think this is the last slide. Thank you. Next slide. Yeah, Telangana, I think it's already, this is the last slide because I think the positives we wanted to show because many people think something is wrong. I think Telangana government, we started very slow. I think there has been some complaint. We are not testing enough. Today, government has taken a very pragmatic view. We will expand testing capacity as much as needed, not throw it into the wind. Don't give you millions of testing. we are supporting that idea. The testing capacity has to increase in proportion to the likelihood of positive cases. So we have daily forecast of what positive cases will come. Already it's gone to 21,000 now. Last I heard, it's going up daily basis. So I think government is taking a pragmatic view and we support that. Secondly, the government is prioritizing by giving 100 crores. We talked about it. The third one is more manpower is getting deployed. Like we talked about postgraduate students, the government is talking about more nursing. Other part is about our health infrastructure in private. One of the best in India. We are supposed to be. We are probably more prepared. We have more private sector to support us, and therefore we can really look forward to that. And the recovery rate in Telangana now it's 73-75%. We can go up to 86%. I think then we are in a very, very, very positive wicket. Yes, it will be a reality. COVID will be a reality, but we will get over it. I think that's the closing message that we want to give. And this is Richard Feynman is a very great scientist. He's a physicist, and he made a statement, a very important statement for public policy. At the end of his report on Shuttle Challenger, all of us know it, Shuttle Challenger, while taking off, exploded. And his report, he said, for a successful technology, reality must take precedence over public relations. For nature cannot be fooled, because here COVID is the nature. COVID will run its own flow. Our job is to focus more and more on science, look at the reality, and work on pragmatic action items. I think that's what we want to recommend. Thank you for your patience. I think it's been a long session. Over to you, Srini.
Yeah, Murali, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, Murali, thank you. That was a very good exposure of what we should be doing. And, how, especially more interesting is how we should be changing the media narrative. I think to some extent, if you compare for the last webinar and this time, the media narrative has undergone a change.
Definitely.
Of course, more needs to be done. But coming back to the suggestions that were made, I couldn't agree with you more than this. But then one practical problem could be in the midst of tackling the pandemic now, switching over the health infrastructure system to a three-tier system could lead to some confusion. I do not know how even if the government accepts that recommendations, moving over to the three-tier system from the existing system now. From the existing system, what we understand is that from these dawakhanas and primary health centers, they are only conducting these rapid antigen tests, and at some places they are doing these RT-PCR tests. So, bringing that, making that into the first tier system, I think it could lead to some problems. But I think there is
one way out, Srini. I think yesterday Dr. Gurva Reddy was there, and he was saying that, for example, it's not difficult to set up an online software, app-based software. Once you register in this model, what happens is the app guides you on a period. You don't have to go anywhere else. Supposing I'm registered, first of all, an hospital is assigned to me. It's easy to do based on PIN code. Very easy to do GIS system. We can create the software in no time. The second part is, as the patient progresses, you can real and on time, online, the patient, whoever is the doctor will update. What is the status? What is the current status? Automatically, it will escalate to the next level. Setting up an online system to do this is not a problem. The question what you are asking is, how do we create capacity in the primary and secondary care center? The primary care center, there's no oxygen. Secondary care centers only we're talking about oxygen beds. Primary care centers are basically clean infrastructure, which is well lit. It has got a doctor in attendance, but people are normally just quarantined. That's all. There is no treatment required for the primary center. Secondary centers also, we are providing only oxygen beds. Anything on that we are escalating. Today what happens is people requiring oxygen, people requiring primary care are all sitting in 5-star hotels.
Yeah.
And especially yesterday, Dr. Guruvaradi also mentioned that, ultimately when it comes to you and me, we all want to go to private sector only. The load is only on private sector. All the rich people, all the elected representatives, everybody wants to go there. So unless we change that narrative, we will have, I think in my mind, it is a problem. But if all of us put our heads together and we are willing to put very closely, we can get an IT company to work with us and we can create that infrastructure in no time.
Yeah, well appreciated point towards Murali. The only thing is that if you come back to this changing the narrative of the media, for example, most of the media organizations, they fail to understand, they fail to analyze the statistics that are available there. Technically speaking, government is giving all these details, number of positive cases, active cases, death cases and everything. But we fail to correlate that because there is a lack of capability here. We must admit that we can't understand the statistics. Not all media organizations make efforts to understand that thing. So a little bit of a supportive analysis every day would be of great help. Because
that is what we said. Srini, we talked about a COVID support monitoring center we're setting up, no?
Exactly.
It will do daily bulletins on the analytics and graphs, etc. So media can take data from them. It should be based on government data. We'll extrapolate it and show what it means for people to understand. That role can be done by this monitoring center.
Yeah, whether the monitoring center comes into effect or not, I do not know, because we'll post these recommendations to the government and there has...
No, we can send it up. Government says
we will do
has
that.
been ready, we are willing to do, we are going
in fact, I had been advocating this to whoever people I know in CMO or with the health minister or anyone. But the kind of a proactive, what the governments are always reactive, they're not proactive.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then if the statistics was one change, what we have seen is that the health bulletin that is being given in the morning instead of 10:30 or 9 hours, 11 o'clock in the night. Now it is coming in the morning. So even before we start all these things, can you guys come up with some sort of an analysis to begin with, so that at least if one newspaper starts publishing, you would have noticed we had filing a lot of positive stories about the recoveries and this thing. And now gradually other media organizations are also picking it up.
No, what I will do, I will talk to ASCI. I think Shashwat is there. I think we'll talk to them whether we can start publishing analytical bulletins from this monitoring center. We create ourselves. We don't need government permission to publish it. We will do the first draft of it and then we'll take Srini's input on it and then let's start publishing from day after tomorrow. What's stopping us?
In fact, we could do even more than that thing. If you can analyze the data and make it presentable, we will further reduce it in such a way that we can use it in the print. We can use an interactive graphic that can be accessed on the mobile phones. Interactive zip files we can make. All those things we will be able to do that.
What we will do to begin with, we will create a report format, analytical report format, graphs and all that. Show it to you. You tell me what data you want. We will try and create it for you. First partnership, we'll launch it with Telangana today.
Sure.
Then we'll offer it to every media who wants it. We'll give the same data. So we are happy to do that. Are we agreeing with this?
Yeah.
I'm asking Subodh, are you with it? Subodh? Subodh, I can't hear you.
Subodh, I think, is not available right now.
Shashwat, are you there? Shashwat, can we then talk to... we'll come back to you. I'll talk to ASCI DG. I think our intention is that we're not asking for money to run the monitoring center.
No, we will be making use of the available data that is in the public realm, and then analyze it, and my duty will be to put it out onto the people.
Perfect.
So what I can do is, we have our print medium, and we are strong on the web. Perhaps I can rope in one TV channel, T-News, and I can rope in a Telugu media house. And once it starts rolling, I'm sure other media will come to you seeking information, which we will gladly share it with people.
100%, sir. We are agreeable. You don't have to sell it. I'm always of the view. Because I'm inside what the problem is. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Let's do it. We will get approval from ASCI.
And let us do one thing. The very sharp Murali. One thing is the three-tier system or whatever the recommendations that have been made now. I do not know how long it will take for the government to put them into action. But we can identify at least 1 or 2 or 3 points and we can straightaway implement them.
Right.
Number one is the data analysis.
Yeah.
Number two is, we can talk to health department and ask them to give us more information about the positive cases, and they are doing it, but they are doing it in the most haphazard way. Somebody produces a video or somebody produces a tweet and then they tweet it, but there is no organized way of channelizing the whole energy that we can talk to some people and get it done. And number three, the kind of a communication strategy that has to be adopted, it need not go up to the chief minister level. Perhaps I will speak to Itala Rajendra and say that you said the communication strategy should be over communication.
Yes.
But now what is happening is any official communication coming from government is only through the either press conferences once in a week or twice in a week, or through the bulletin. So perhaps we will speak to Itala Rajendra or somebody and then get this thing done immediately.
Yes.
And of course, we will continue to pursue all the recommendations.
No, I think it's a wonderful idea. I think even that our center also will supplement the information on a daily basis. So we will publish daily analytics, daily meaning, some summaries of that will be there. I think most important is trend. I think, Srini, what is the biggest problem is we don't see trends. We only see 1 day's data. Right? That doesn't tell you anything.
It's only incident-oriented reportage that is done by the media. We don't see the trend, we don't see the pattern,
and the
we don't analyze it.
Yeah, for example, per 1,000 population, we don't have data. We only have actual number of deaths. We don't look at death per 1,000 population. We are one of the lowest in the world.
Yeah.
So none of the comparative data is there. So we will create a standard format of the report after this meeting is over. Yeah. And we will announce a joint partnership with you. Yeah. You come back and say what you want. We'll first launch it with you. Then let us come.
Yeah.
What we'll give. We'll support you.
Yeah.
No problem.
Okay, that would be great. Yeah.
That's done.
So,
anything else?
Nothing, Pastor. Thank you so much. And we will be reporting this extensively. All the recommendations and the studies, conservative approach and alternate approaches or whatever. That was an excellent.
Three-tier architecture. Please be advised. You can implement if you make up your mind. Government is far good in efficiency implementing. See, our problem with the government is never in implementation. The bureaucracy is super fast, super efficient when they want to do something.
Exactly.
The whole idea is to convince them to do it. Otherwise, three-tier architecture is nothing. All divide. For example, COVID pharmacies. Why can't we have COVID pharmacies here? Why can't we have 200 centers across the country where the government procure and give it to them? Why should I go and buy? Because black market is going on. Everybody knows. Paper you are carrying a story about all the drugs. Price is 20,000. You're charging 60,000 rupees. Why should the hospitals buy from the pharmacy? You should go and buy. Hospital cannot say you want to bring it from outside. That I think they should banish it. That's unacceptable. Even today you go, they will say, no, you have to bring it from inside. Why? Why should I buy consumables, PPEs from you? And PPEs are already priced so much. I can buy standardized. It's not a packaging, right? Ultimately it comes as a package. How does it matter whether I buy from the pharmacy or from somewhere else? So government cannot control whether black marketing is happening or not. But if they keep free availability on 200 stores, people will buy from there and give. How can the black market come? This can be implemented, no?
Yeah.
You are doing already testing center location. Why can't you have 200 pharmacies? Right, from oxygen, everything will buy from there. I think that's a good idea. You should see the three-tier architecture. If I ask me the top 3 recommendations, one is what you talked about, health bulletins and news have to be modified. Lot more positive story, lot more analytics. And the second one is COVID pharmacies. And the third is three-tier architecture. If we don't do three-tier architecture, today what are the kind of people are angry because the poor man doesn't get admission in a big hospital. The rich man gets it. Now, this is exactly what we are talking about, not imagery of the government. The government is more pro-poor than any other government in the past. That is the strength of TRS government. They're doing more for the poor than for the rich. And we rich are claiming all the time they're not taking care of us, but they're taking care of them. And imagine you have an insurance person sitting there in the hospital. Why should we go around claiming money from somewhere else? The government didn't instruct all the insurance companies, we put a representative. Like, you go to buy a vehicle, all the vehicle financing companies are sitting in the vehicle place, right? When you buy the vehicle, they do it on the spot. Similarly, when I go to the hospital, why can't insurance company be sitting there? And I'm running from pillar to post, borrowing money because I don't have money. Insurance, I've already taken insurance, and you make it out. You work it out with the hospital to make sure that I don't pay cashless. Even for journalists is the problem, right, Srini?
Yeah,
Cashless.
100%.
No, so
In fact, in respect of a single journalist who got admitted,
Yeah.
they had to source remdesivir medicine from a private company and by paying money. I know for sure.
Yeah, correct.
They had to pay extra money.
No, I think we should tell government you procure all materials should be given to the government, like you're distributing liquor. Arey, government is a distributor of liquor. Why can't you distribute medicine to the 200 places?
Absolutely.
What's so great about it? And there are only 8 or 10 items. There are not 200,000 items. Comorbid, we can't worry about. We can't do all that. We only focus on COVID items. And there are more than 10, 12 items.
Yeah.
So we should do that very strongly. My belief, these are the 4 points I want to emphasize. COVID pharmacy, and the most important thing, ASCII come forward to provide the daily updates for you, and we can give you the format that you want also, so that you can use it for various media analytics of your own. We'll support the media.
Whatever format Murali, if you keep the reader in mind,
Yes.
for example, the data analytic prediction models were explained here. If we explain that to the reader, they will not understand. They will simply jump over it. What we have to focus is highlighting what needs to be highlighted and how we have to highlight it. You just bring that Excel sheet into a presentable 5 or 6 points. We can put that or use that for a text based report or a web-based report or an interactive graphic that can be made. As simple as that.
Yeah,
More than
I said, Srini, once we work with you, we will learn from you exactly what you want. We'll improve it. We'll improve it. 2-3 rounds, we will get it right. Then we standardize the report.
Yeah, we will do one thing then. We will take one, the latest, health bulletin, for example.
Yeah.
And then we try to correlate and we will try to arrive at what can be done every day.
Harish, are you there in the call, Harish? There's one of Shashwat and
No,
Harish.
Harish is not there.
I'm here, sir.
Both of you will work together and develop. I think you should nominate somebody from your side, Srini, to who can work with us to draft the first version. We will plan it for day after tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll completely do the version.
Yeah.
Day after tomorrow, first bulletin will come out. Can we try that, Shashwat?
Yeah.
The data is already with us. All we have to do is extract the data in a particular form. So daily morning fixed time, we will publish it and send it to all the media or publish it in our website. ASCII website, we'll publish it. So people
would be nice. Yeah, and anybody can take it and quote it to ASCII and also use that.
So let's do the target for day after tomorrow.
Fine. From my side, from our side, I will be there and my colleague Sai Gopal will be there. Sai Gopal has been consistently following this Corona developments. So both of us will be there. Even if I am not there, Sai Gopal will be there in touch with us.
Just ask Sai Gopal to send me a message.
Sure.
I will have his number.
Done.
And we will standardize the format. You try and fix up a meeting with the minister if you want, health minister.
I
do the
that.
same presentation to him
Yeah.
and also some of the officials because they need to buy into this. Moment they buy into this, then we are there to support it.
Yeah.
He has to buy it. So please fix up a meeting with Telangana today and him and us.
Sure, sir. 100%. I'll get back to you on that count.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so
everybody.
much. Pleasure. Yeah.
You have your number, Murali's number. I'll give it.